Regional variants are the best thing to have ever happened to Pokemon, and they suck. Welcome back to my channel, Ragamuffins. My name is Raggy Rug, and today, that's right, I'm talking about regional variants from Pokemon. You know them. They've been around since Gen 7. That's like 15 years now. I say that as a joke, but it probably has been close to 15 years. I feel so old. Regional variants, if you don't know, are essentially just different versions of the same Pokemon, and I feel silly explaining this because they've been around for so long now. Since as far back as Gen 7, that's Sun and Moon, we have been treated to alternate versions of already existing Pokemon. Notable ones include Raticate, Grimer, Exeggutor. We've all seen them, we all know it. And the idea is that they are the same Pokemon. However, they are aesthetically different to suit the region. And often there will be some like in-lore, in-world explanation for this physical difference. In the case of the aforementioned Exeggutor, the Alola region is just closer to the sun, it's a hotter climate, the trees just grow taller, and that's just how Exeggutor is in the Alola region. It's more than just a physical change, which I feel like would have been enough, but it changes up the meta quite a bit actually. It changes not just their physical appearance, but their stats, their type, their abilities. So really, they are only the same Pokemon in name only, because they function potentially completely differently, and the rules are different for everyone. This is the first problem with regional variants, the level of inconsistency. Across all regional variant Pokemon, there are some who are almost damn near identical in terms of stats and abilities and just functionality, and then there are others who just could not be less the same. I love regional variants, don't get me wrong. I think regional variants are a great idea, and that's why Game Freak stole it. That's right. If you're not aware, this is not an idea that Game Freak came up with, in spite of what they might tell you. Regional variants have been a thing for many, many years before Sun and Moon ever even came out, in the form of clever fan art. See, a lot of people on DeviantArt and other art sharing websites would actually take a Pokemon, and what they would do, it was something of a trend. I remember seeing it a lot on like Pinterest and stuff. They'd take a Pokemon and they would just draw it in like 9, 10, just a bunch of different designs, usually with water types. So they would take Magikarp, and then they would give you a reef-style Magikarp, and then a river-style Magikarp, a lake-style, freshwater, saltwater, different variations of the same Pokemon, applying an idea of Darwinian-style evolution to Pokemon, which, like, it was a good idea. And that's why Game Freak stole it. They didn't come up with this idea. But the ideas that we're working with in all of this fan art is not the end result that we got. Pokemon are given essentially just one variation, except in the case of like Meowth, who has like 2, and maybe another one, I don't know. But the overarching point that I'm trying to get to here is that Game Freak handled this idea poorly. The idea, in a nutshell, is certain Pokemon have a different version of themselves suited to the region that may affect their stats and typing and everything and yada yada yada. And like, it's like that in and of itself is not a bad thing, albeit very inconsistent. But then they come up with this idea and we're treated to Alolan Diglett. What the? And then Alolan Dugtrio, possibly the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Oh, wait a minute, there's Alolan Persian. This is like, what? Game Freak sitting around like, how are we going to introduce the concept of this to people? How are we going to establish the idea of a variant? And then they give us like Diglett and Dugtrio and Persian in like the first, like this is their first attempt at doing this, and these are objectively the worst looking Pokemon you will ever see. Some of them are cool, kind of. Some of them actually are cool. You got Alolan Ninetales, you got Alolan Marowak. Solid. I like them well enough. But like, you're trying to sell this idea? This is like early game. This is early game. You're trying to sell me on this with this Grimer and Mud? That's not a Pokemon I would have wanted on my team anyway. And you get, if somebody had like Grimer and Rattata and Meowth and Diglett on their team because they were a variant, it's like that they would have the ugliest team in history ever, hands down. What were you thinking? This was your chance to do something wild. You can kind of see what they're doing. Like Diglett is kind of coming out like the volcanic rock here, you know, and it was like, okay, because there's volcanoes in the region. And then like the hair, I like when a design is auspiciously the thing that it's supposed to be. And what I get out of this is, I don't know, a wart? And I don't know anything about most of these Pokemon when it comes to like the competitive meta or anything like that. And maybe they are awesome, but I doubt it because I never hear about them. I've never heard anyone like swear by Alolan Dugtrio. And then you'd think maybe when we got Sword and Shield, the whole thing would have turned out better. Like maybe they'd have learned from mistakes and then, oh look, a different version of Stunfisk that is almost identical to Stunfisk, the ugliest Pokemon in the entire Pokedex. Wow, you didn't learn a goddamn thing, did you? Farfetch'd? Farfetch'd. Okay, I thought that this was just a normal Farfetch'd. Galarian Farfetch'd changed so little that when I saw this for the first time, I concluded that that was just normal Farfetch'd and this was Galarian Farfetch'd. And that's Sirfetch'd. And that leads me to another issue. More of the inconsistencies have led to the fact that certain Pokemon, thanks to regional variants, have now been given evolutions that they sorely needed and made them relevant. However, they are locked behind the regional variant. So Sirfetch'd is good, Sirfetch'd is cool. We like Sirfetch'd. If you want Sirfetch'd, you need Galarian Farfetch'd, not the regular one. Can regular Farfetch'd evolve yet still? No. No, he cannot. But you can still get Sirfetch'd if you get the different one. It's messy, and it's getting worse, because with Sword and Shield, and then Scarlet and Violet, things get even worse, because they started introducing Pokemon that look like they could be regional variants. And I'm convinced that they started doing this just to mess with us. Everyone's watching the teaser trailers. Everyone is just like soaking in every part of like new content that is teased when new games are being released. And then it's like, hey, look at this mysterious new Pokemon that we have available in the upcoming game. I wonder what it is. And you go, oh my god, Paldean Diglett. No, you idiot. Obviously, this is Wiglet. Come on. Are you kidding me? You made a Pokemon that looks so much like Diglett and is obviously just a regional variant of Diglett and is a water type version of Diglett, which is so cool. It's a fun idea. I love that. It's smart. And then you gave it an evolution that is just the same story, but with Dugtrio called Wugtrio. But it's not a regional variant. Marowak, Alolan Marowak. Both Marowak. They are Marowaks. Diglett, Wiglet. Completely different species. Not related in any way, shape, or form. Any resemblance is literally a coincidence. Or that's what Game Freak would have you think. They'd like you to think that, but we know they're messing with us. I don't appreciate all of the messing around. Can we just call a Diglett, please? Wiglet and Wugtrio's design is predicated not on creating a cool design, but on deceiving the fans. That's what it's all about. They were designed to be a double take. Otherwise, they might have flown into obscurity. Who knows? It's hard to say after the fact. And then outside of that, Paldea gave us like two regional variants. We got Wooper, maybe another one. But then on top of that, they introduced Paradox forms. Well, okay, let's open up this can of worms. Are Paradox forms regional variants? No, they are not. If you follow the logic that Wiglet is not a regional variant of Diglett because its name is different and therefore is just not the same species, then Iron Treads certainly has nothing to do with Donphan. My problem with this is while they may not be regional variants in the traditional sense, they are obviously newly designed Pokemon based on already established Pokedex entries. Fluttermane is not Mischievous. It's not even Paldean Mischievous. But you would be a fool to try and convince anyone that one isn't based on the other. This probably wouldn't upset me as much if Game Freak would just commit. See, we got a bunch of Paradox forms. We got a bunch of futuristic ones, we got a bunch of prehistoric ones. All of them based on already existing Pokemon. Jigglypuff, Salamence, even a bunch of legendaries. But outside of context clues, having to pick up on the theming of there being some element of time dilation, time paradox happening, outside of that, Game Freak never mentions it. Not one time in the game does anyone draw attention to the fact that Donphan is the direct descendant of Iron Tusk, or that he also ultimately will become Iron Treads. They created like a whole thing here, a whole scale of time that we could look at and marvel at. It was a whole thing, and they didn't acknowledge it. They gave us the story, they gave us the context, and they didn't put the pieces together. I appreciate when a game can tell you a story without telling you, but this is not how it's done. And this is especially the case for Game Freak, who I don't trust to let us just have our cake and eat it too. I wouldn't put it past Game Freak down the road to come out and say, no, Roaring Moon and Salamence are not the same Pokemon. They are not related in any way. No, one is not a future version or past version of the other. That's how little faith I have in Game Freak to honor their own idea. An idea that they ultimately changed after stealing from the fandom, and they're just butchering it. Overall, the whole subject of regional variants is a good idea that was just handled abysmally, honestly. There are features included and then excluded and just started and stopped all the time. And it's become something of a theme, you know, like we did Z moves, goodbye Z moves. We did Gigantamax, goodbye Gigantamax. Regional variants, though, seem like they are a thing that is here to stay, although it changes up every game, and that's not a bad thing, but they're complicating it by adding nuance that doesn't need to be there. I think the idea of the Paradox Pokemon in and of themselves is not a bad idea, but they should have committed, brought it full circle, and made it make sense. There's so much fan theory around it, and so little closure that I know we're never going to get. Overall, the lack of follow-through has left me wildly disappointed, and it leaves me wondering if the next games are going to be even messier, and would I want to play that? Leave your comments down below on what you think and what you'd like to see next, guys. Subscribe!